I'm going to tell you why this year's Cincinnati Bearcats football team could remind us a lot of the 2006 Philadelphia Eagles.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Boy, how's that for a tease? Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. It's free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, including right here on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel and follow it to get an alert every time that we drop a new episode. My name's Alex Frank, your host each and every day right here on Locked On Bearcats. We are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Today's episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. So I really think that this Cincinnati Bearcats team is going to prove why they are still amongst the relevant teams in college football this year, in the top 25. I don't know if they're going to finish in the top 25. I think they could get pretty close. But when I think about this Bearcats team, I just think about something Zach Freeze brought up yesterday. And that is that the Bearcats are not even 2 years removed from playing in the college football playoff. This team, there's only been one season played of college football since the Bearcats went to the college football playoff. Just one season. And I know it feels like a distant memory. Luke Fickell's no longer here. Desmond Ritter's no longer here. Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant, Jerome Ford, all the core guys from that team are no longer here. But it's only been 1 year. It hasn't even been a year and a half. I think we're forgetting something here. And yes, there's been a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty now surrounds the program. But is that uncertainty actually surrounding the program? Do they feel that way? Does the program feel that way? Or is it that? Or is it just a reflection of you? Do you feel the uncertainty? And if you do, that's totally fine. I feel a little bit of uncertainty given what this program has been the last 5 years and how much continuity has been within the program, but that doesn't mean I'm not optimistic about this year. And I'm going to give you the reason why. So I mentioned in the cold open that I think the Bearcats this year could remind us of the 2006 Philadelphia Eagles. Now, why of all teams that particular team? Well, here's why I say that. So earlier last offseason, right before the season started, I was listening to the Peter King podcast, which is a really good podcast. By the way, I don't know how many of you know this. Peter King, or knew this, Peter King is a Cincinnati native. So Peter King released his preseason power rankings, and he discussed them on his podcast. And he talked about the Kansas City Chiefs heading into this past season. And maybe the Bearcats are going to remind us a lot of the Chiefs as well from this past season. But the Chiefs this past season went into their season without Tyreek Hill and without Tyrann Mathieu. Those are core pieces from their teams, went to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, and now they were no longer there. But Peter King said something about Andy Reid, and this was in 2006. Peter King said that regardless of what the makeup of the roster was, a team coached by Andy Reid was always going to have a chance at the start of the season. And that 2006 Eagles team is very reminiscent of this year's Bearcats team. That Eagles team was coming off a last place finish in 2005. They weren't very good in 2005. They struggled. But that was only 1 year removed from their Super Bowl appearance in 2004. And the Eagles, let's be honest, they weren't as good as they were in 2004. They didn't nearly have the score in 2006 that they had in 2004. But they won the division. They won the division with a 10-6 record. They won their last 5 regular season games with a backup quarterback in Jeff Garcia. They won a playoff game with Jeff Garcia and then nearly won a second. And that Eagles team, again, they weren't expected to be very good. They were in the same division as the Giants, who were coming off a division title, the Cowboys, who had bounced back aspirations, Washington, who had made the playoffs the year before. So the Bearcats are coming into a season in the Big 12, a new conference. The Eagles didn't change divisions or conferences. The Bearcats, look, they're probably being trumped by Oklahoma. They're probably being overlooked by Kansas State and TCU and maybe Texas. But the Bearcats, given what they've done the last 5 years, given what they've done the last 20 years, they are still a relevant program. And it hasn't been that long removed from their playoff appearance. I know Luke Fickell and Mike Denbrock and Desmond Ritter and the core from that team are no longer in this building. But you're still a relevant program, I think. And that's why this team, you might have low expectations, given the conference they're in, given the personnel, given the coaching staff, whatever. The point of the matter is this. It's the fact that Cincinnati still has relevancy. They have a fan base, they have a program, they have a foundation in place that is going to enable them to be good this year. All right, coming up, progress isn't linear, or is it? I'll explain after I explain to you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are almost here. The play-in tournament begins next Tuesday, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes, straight, and plus FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Cannot wait for the NBA playoffs to start next Tuesday. I'm a Knicks fan. The Knicks are going to be in the playoffs. What seed they're going to be remains to be determined. But back to the Bearcats basketball. So Sean brought this up yesterday. Progress isn't linear. And I'm not really sure if I believe that 100%. I think I think I say that because let's say Cincinnati next year in the Big 12, however many games they're going to play. By the way, the Big East Big 12 matchup, the Big East Big 12 battle matchups were released yesterday. And the Bearcats are not playing in that battle, which I'm a little disappointed in. But UCF and BYU are not playing either. Houston is the only new team who is, and ironically, they're coming to the Cintas Center to play Xavier. But it is disappointing to not be a part of that. The good news is they're for sure going to be a part of the Big 12 SEC Challenge in late January because there's 14 teams in each conference. There can be 14 games. So there is this sense that the Bearcats could take a step back next year. And with Jeremiah Davenport entering the transfer portal, that is likely going to happen. But my belief is this. If the Bearcats next year finish, let's say, 18-15, and only 5-13 in the Big 12, or, and they lose in the first round of the tournament. Is that necessarily taking a step back? There are teams last year in the Big 12 who went 5-13 and still had a shot to play for the NCAA tournament. The Bearcats next year could finish with an under 500 conference record, and I would still almost tell you that's progress if they're competitive and they have a chance to make the tournament. Progress, I think it is linear. Because there's a difference between progress and regress. Regression is not linear. Regression is just a blip. Regression is just a setback. And for me, I think if Cincinnati, they don't have to go 25-6 and 13-5 next year. They might finish with one of the worst records in the Big 12 next year. And that is okay if they do. It's going to be tougher competition. You know that. I know that. We know that. All right? So that is where I'm at with the Bearcats. Progress is linear because regression is not. Regression is not a part of progress. Regression is a setback. Progress always is linear. And if you stay on a linear path, you try to stay on it as much as you can. Therefore, progress can be linear. And I might not be making sense, but I think what I'm saying is if they finish with a worse record than this past year, but they do so in a more competitive conference and maybe position themselves to still have a shot at the tournament, that actually might be some progress. That is going to do it for me today here on Locked On Bearcats. A little bit of a shorter show, given that it is, well, I shouldn't say that it is given that it is the offseason, but a little bit of a shorter show today. By the way, I'm gonna start to do this more often, but every day when I say it's this day or if I do, what the national days are. So we've got National Beer Day today. Obviously today is Good Friday. National Coffee Cake Day. That's a really good, actually. National No Housework Day. That's a good holiday for me. National Girl Me Too Day. There you go. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. For your second listen today, why don't you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball with experts Isaac Shane and Andy Patton, bringing you everything you need to know on and off the court. Plus, hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Coming up next week, the ideal plan is to have Neil Meyer back on for Meyer Mondays from the front office news, previewing the Bearcats spring game. I'll be back on Tuesday. Wednesday, hopefully we will have start Williams Wednesday with Jason or Justin Williams of the Cincinnati Enquirer or the Athletic. Thursday, I'll be back with you. And then every Thursday, Russ Hellman and I tried to do a weekly live room. Was not able to do one yesterday. Apologies for that in advance. I was supposed to have maintenance come to my apartment, and guess what? They never showed. So all that for nothing. Russ and I will be back next Thursday to preview the spring game, and then that'll be podcasted for Friday. And then spring game is next Saturday. Next Saturday is the Bearcats spring game. I'm looking forward to being down in Nippert Stadium, covering it for Locked On Bearcats and all Bearcats. And the weather, I was thinking about this at work yesterday. The weather could be, and I don't know, I'm looking it up as I'm telling you this, but the weather for the spring game could be really, really good. Which last year, obviously, it was moved indoors but this year, if we can find the weather for Cincinnati, let me see if I can get to the 10-day. That's weird. I don't have a 10-day option. Oh, there we go. They have a monthly option too. I used to think they didn't have that. But What we do know is that in Cincinnati, the 10-day forecast next Saturday, how about this? A high of 83 degrees and partly cloudy, low of 58. So it could be one of those 70-degree days at spring practice, at the spring game. It's going to be unbelievable to see. For Locked On Bearcats, my name is Alex Frank. Have a great rest on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's and an ATI. Instagram, AlexFrank9_ and email alex3frank@gmail.com. Back next week on Monday. Have a great weekend. Have a great Easter weekend. Have a great Passover weekend. Wishing a happy Passover to all my Jewish family and friends. And have a great rest of your day. And I'll be back on Monday right here on Locked On Bearcats.